I think of culture as a living spiritual entity that is manifesting through a people, and the spirit or the god of the West is Faustian. The Faustian Spirit, put simply, is the relentless pursuit of knowledge, power, and experience, a quest to expand and master the mysteries of life. Now, there are many gods that compete for the soul of the West, like the Christian God, and we'll get to this later. But ultimately, Faust is what distinguishes us. The Faustian spirit was born in ancient Greece and in the blood of our pagan ancestors. It was the fuel behind Alexander the Great and Plato. It was fully manifested in the Renaissance and every high point of European culture. The Faustian spirit was the force behind the age of discovery and the scientific enlightenment. It is what led the pilgrims west, inspired the likes of Nikola Tesla and Edison, and is responsible for every technological advancement in the modern world. And now, to the spirit that we owe everything, we seek to kill it. We now see this ever-striving spirit as evil, as immoral, and there are forces that seek to destroy it and all that is Western. Quote, "The most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history." George Orwell. If you care about Western history at all, where we came from and where we're going, you must understand Faust. The term Faustian spirit is a philosophical and cultural concept that comes from the character Faust in German literature, specifically in Goethe's play. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, excuse my pronunciation here, was one of the greatest polymaths to ever live. He had sufficient genius and historical timing in the early 1800s to capture the very essence of the Western spirit. His play Faust, in many ways, represented the limit and the fulfillment of the Western ideal. The character of Faust was a master of knowledge, proficient in all human domains and yet deeply unsatisfied. The idea of striving for greatness and transcending human limitations defined Faust. He embodied deep-seated ambition and existential restlessness. His yearning for knowledge and experience fueled his genius, but also his discontent. Convinced he'll never find lasting happiness, Faust enters into a pact with the devil, Mephistopheles. The terms are that Faust will gain unlimited earthly power, magic, and knowledge. However, if he experiences a moment so fulfilling that he wishes for it to last forever, his soul will belong to Mephistopheles for eternity. Now, spoiler alert, Faust eventually does find that moment in the daily overcoming of himself and rising towards a grander vision for humanity. And in the end, he's redeemed by the Most High because he is manifesting the divine will. Now, I missed a lot of nuance in this quick synopsis, but ultimately, Faust is the archetype of ever striving, of relentless pursuit of becoming. And this is what has defined the Western man for the past 1,000 years or more. And yes, this Faustian spirit is both light and dark in the extremes. It's responsible for all of our rapid advancements across the intellectual, scientific, and physical frontiers. It is the Faustian spirit that inspired our unstoppable march of the West across the entire known world. As Uber Boyo said in a humorous X-post recently, "I thank you Americans for being insane, violent frontiersmen who will not rest until there's a McDonald's on Mars." Like it or not, this is the source of the Western tradition that we must understand. Part 2, the roots of the West, the Faustian, pagan, and Christian. Many people think the Christian God is the God of the West, and maybe it is in the outer display, but the driving spirit is undoubtedly Faustian and even pagan. Christianity, with its compassion and heaven-centered worldview, could never conquer the Faustian God, although it did temper it. The Western Faustian people simply adopted some of Christianity's softer virtues as secondary attributes. This was best witnessed in the warrior bishops of the Middle Ages, the greatest contradictions ever seen in human history. These were both soldiers that were priests. "Thou shalt not kill," the Bible says, and Jesus said to turn the other cheek, and yet the pinnacle servant of Christ was a knight. Western Christians have always loved the heroic warrior who fights for God and righteousness. And this again is the pagan values overcoming the Christian values. The instincts and the god of the blood are stronger than any imposed religion. In fact, the thing that most traditional Christians love about Christianity are all pagan in origin. The love of beauty, honor, excellence, and family. These come from the Germanic and Celtic tribes of the north. Christianity merely had to adopt these values in order to get converts. And if we look at the heights of Roman Catholicism and Christianity in the West, it is full of knights and war. So, such a contradiction. And that's because the dominant drive of the West is Faustian. Now, paganism and Christianity are two great roots of the tree of Western civilization. But that driving force towards mastery of open spaces, towards greatness and glory for self or glory for God is so Faustian in nature. Every great man, every great explorer, every great deed, and every great folly are driven by this impulse, whether or not you're a follower of Christ. Pure Faustian energy has a shadow of colonizing others, abandoning traditions, and pursuing goals in a reckless and amoral way. We see this manifested in our aggressive AI development, no matter the dire cost it might have for humanity. Also, the shadow of Faust was manifested in how European peoples marched across the Americas and obliterated Native American or indigenous cultures. Today, we are very focused on the negative sides of the Faustian spirit. We look backwards and try to pick apart the heroes of our past and cast all of history in a negative light. Many people are actively hostile to ambition, greatness, and all that is Western. Now, of course, yes, the Faustian spirit must evolve, but also understand this ever-striving spirit of the West is responsible for everything great that's come from the past 1,000 years. From the Renaissance to the Enlightenment, all inventors, entrepreneurs, pioneers, explorers, spiritual leaders, and yes, conquerors are manifestations of the Faustian god. Look at this list of all the great inventors that changed the world most. If you notice, they all come from the Western tradition. Part 4, the enemy subverting the West. We once loved our heroes, the exceptional leader, pioneer, or entrepreneur, but even that has been changing in the past 20 years. In fact, we are creating a culture that no longer admires the great man, but rather the common. We condemn success and excellence as simply the results of privilege. And instead of a beautiful ideal, we venerate what is inclusive, what is equal, and what is non-offensive. Just look at any ad next time you're walking through the airport or looking at a TV, and you'll see what I mean. All that is Western or exceptional is cast as oppressive and wrong, and I believe this subversion of the Faustian man is part of an active agenda. If Faust is the god or the spiritual force behind the West, he has a brother who isn't quite as strong or glorious and yet wants total domination. This jealous god works through his prophets and people to quietly subdue the masses and Western man. They cunningly use propaganda, education, political power, and specifically money to coax men to sleep, to erase our understanding of Western history and our connection to our ancestors. The enemy's goal is to slowly make the West hate itself and wither. Perhaps this is just a conspiracy, but the more I learn, the more I'm convinced this is a very real spiritual war. Look closely and you can see it playing out in every ad, political statement, Hollywood movie, media source, and social movement. Regardless if you buy the conspiracy against Western man, which should be obvious, the Faustian spirit has also started to kill itself simply because it's reached its limit. The Faustian spirit is first and foremost a pioneer, an explorer, a conqueror. The problem is there's very few frontiers left to us other than space or the hyper-specialized fields of science and tech. Outside of training physically or spiritually, very few people can actualize the Faustian spirit in a meaningful way. Man used to live in constant open spaces where he had to learn skills to master the hunt, the battlefield, the wilderness, and any intellectual or artistic frontier. And because of this, he had access to direct purpose. We totally lack this today, and this is the real reason that most men are struggling. The average man is distracted and hedonistic to cope with the lack of meaning and frontiers. The self-improvers out there are often driven by a need for purpose and greatness, but often can't find where those lie outside of the gym. They cycle through constant disappointment because in their blood, they want more. They want open space, danger, and the opportunity to be exceptional. And there's so little space left to most people today. Hence, the most Faustian of young men feel the most pain and restlessness until they find their own frontier, which I'm working on right now. The answer in my mind is real tribalism again, not around some superficial social or political identity. I mean decentralized and re-tribalized societies that endeavor to create beauty and greatness as a people. This is the real frontier that we have lost, the cultural frontier. We have seen individualism and this form of the Faustian spirit to its conclusion. How many more tech or digital entrepreneurs do we really need? Yeah, progressing science is great and all, but today we need moral and cultural entrepreneurs more than anything, because even if we do cure cancer, life will still be empty without culture. The next evolution of the Faustian spirit to me is not man seeking greatness and destiny alone, but rather in connection to his tribe, his people, and his God. This is where the Faustian spirit once came from, and where it needs to return to. I, for one, am a son of the Faustian spirit, and you probably are too if you're watching this. It's what inspires your creative and spiritual and physical quest in life. And I never felt so understood until I read Faust and understood the Faustian spirit. I think a lot could be said about the decline of the West and the spiritual death that we are witnessing in most people. So here, I want to talk about how I cultivate and balance the Faustian spirit in my own life. Here's the bullet points. Step 1 is imagination and will. Cultivating these two things is the root of the heroic energy. In order to live on fire with the Faustian spirit, you must have a clear goal, a clear conquest of some kind, and burning desire for it. Step 2 is surround yourself with kindred people. Build your wolf pack, my friends. It's one of the most powerful things I've ever done in my life for lighting the fires of vitality. And if you don't have this in your real life right now, I invite you to the Men's Academy. First link in the description below. You can come hang out with me and like-minded brothers on calls every single week. And I have a full course on building social capital and building your real life brotherhood. Come join us, and if you don't like it, I'll refund you 100% of your first month. Step 3 and 4 are about balancing the Faustian impulse. Now, this is really important. 3 is about active stillness. In stillness, you connect to transcendence and you connect to your intuition. And I think this is actually what distinguishes a true leader in my mind. He leads not from his ego, but from his superior self. Step 4 is about the soul, the heart, and ritual. When I'm pure Faustian and greatness oriented, it's awesome for 2 weeks. I'm making so much progress, but ultimately it starts to feel hollow. I start to feel like Faust, ready to make a pact with the devil. You see, without love, without the heart, and without deep experiences of being alive, life is not complete. And that's why I think a shared ritual, a meditation, a dance and music practice is so important. I know for me, cold plunge and martial arts days with my bros, or potlucks and dances with my community, changed my world more than anything else. They help balance me out and open my eyes. And as Joseph Campbell once said, most people think they're seeking the meaning of life. But in reality, they're seeking a deeply meaningful experience of being alive. Ritual was the source of the Dionysic experiences that underpinned ancient Greek, pagan, and all indigenous cultures. And this ritual is something we have totally lost. The experience of dancing, chanting, and freestyle rapping around a fire all night, invoking the gods. Like something like that gets you so far out of your mind and out of your ego and into the experience of being alive that it changes everything for you. I think the path is in cultivating the Faustian will to power to its crescendo, but also cultivating our connection to all the rest of life also to its crescendo. When we do both, boom, that is the maximum power or the maximum flourishing that I want to see in the world. Thanks for watching Wisdom Warriors. You can click here to go deeper into the decline of the West and the coming culture, or you can click here to go deeper into paganism and the shadow work of Carl Jung. Peace.